on NFL Live from ESPN's Adam Schefter. The Kansas City Chiefs restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract this week, lowering his salary cap number from just over $78 million to $34.65 million for the upcoming season, which creates just under $44 million in salary cap space. This is obviously the expected outcome.
Yeah.
They entered way over the cap ahead of the 2026 offseason. So now that they're starting to create some room, what should their priorities be?
Yeah, the only surprise with this, Courtney, is maybe how soon it took place in the offseason. A lot of teams wait until closer to the start of free agency, but Kansas City will continue to do this. A player like Chris Jones is a prime candidate to be next in the restructure circuit for KC. They have to find ways, though, on offense to become more explosive. We saw this team win Super Bowls on the strength of the most explosive offense in the NFL at that time. Now, they've also won Super Bowls on the strength of a defense that could make quarterbacks uncomfortable as well as any team in the NFL. So defensively, it's finding guys besides Chris Jones that can really impact the quarterback more consistently than the rest of that Kansas City front has. Their defensive line depth is simply not good enough. They've got some good, solid pieces, guys like Mike Dana and, of course, George Karlaftis. But you need players beyond Chris Jones that an offense has to game plan around up front. And over the past couple of years, and this year most specifically, that lack of depth really showed up for Kansas City and contributed to this 6-win season.
Yeah, when you're 22nd in sacks, 19th in sacks per drop back, it's just not good enough. And honestly, they have some good young coverage players in the back end also that they're going to want to take care of. Guys like Brian Cooks are going to be somebody who, you're talking about free agents that they're going to need to resign. And then really in the immediate, when you flip over to the offensive side of the football, you know that they're going to have to be players in the Tyreek Hill situation. And it just makes too much sense because as much as they need to go ahead and really build out the defensive side of the football up front, I don't think that they're that lacking at the second and third levels. I think up front, no question. On the offensive side, it really is. It's explosive playmaking ability, which is different than just pure speed. And we know that Tyreek has that. And we know that they know how to use that. They know how to motivate him. They know how to communicate with him. They know how to put him in situations where he can absolutely go off. And with Eric Bieniemy now back in the fold, you have to be, figuring that right now that these guys are in meetings trying to figure out, okay, one, what does Tyreek's prognosis look like as far as his availability? Number two, how do we integrate him back into the football team as far as what we have already? Number three, how does Patrick feel about this? Because everything has to be run by Patrick. And then number four, does it just make sense overall for our football team? Can it help flip this thing back around where we start winning those one-score games again, which obviously we fell off a cliff last year doing that, and we get back on track like we're accustomed to doing? There's a lot going on in Kansas City right now, and the salary cap restructuring right now, or the creating a space, is just the start of it.
Yeah, it was just the start of it, and it was neat the way they did this deal years ago. The $450 million deal, everybody made a big deal out of. They knew they could come and get money from Patrick every year. So this has been in the works. It'll probably happen next year, the year after, and so on and so forth. As far as the Tyreek Hill of it, Lou, sources in Miami, I'm not sure Tyreek Hill is going to be ready at any point this season. I know a lot of people are thinking Tyreek Hill, and we're thinking the best. I'm hearing he may not be ready, and if he is, it's going to be toward the very back end of this season. So if you're Kansas City, I think you can kind of kick the tires on Tyreek Hill. I just don't know if you can count on Tyreek to be the explosive part of your offense. But just to echo what you guys said, I'll keep it really simple. They got to get better up front from a pass rush standpoint. They got to be more explosive on the offensive side of the football. And to me, the biggest bugaboo, the offensive line isn't what it used to be. There was a point in time this offensive line was one of the best in football. The tackle situation there is not good. It's still not good. They got to get better up front. As Patrick is not going to be as elusive as he was coming back off the ACL. So you definitely want to fortify this offensive line. I would start there to make sure we take care of Patrick. And then let's figure out a way to get more explosive and to rush the passer better. But no doubt about it, they got a lot of room, and they can create a lot of room in Kansas City with this move on Patrick Mahomes' contract. And as Lewis said, the Chris Jones deal, they can make room anytime they want to make it.
Yeah, Bug. Tyreek Hill might not be ready, at least at the start of the season, certainly, but it looks like he's in Kansas City now. That according to his Snapchat, so we'll see what that yields.
Snapchat reporting, respect.
Yeah, we just keep everybody informed all the way around here on NFL Live. It is tag time in the NFL. The window for teams to franchise tag players is now open through March 3rd, so let's dive in to some of the more notable names that could get tagged Starting down in Atlanta with tight end Kyle Pitts. Pitts coming off a career year in 2025, ranking second among tight ends in both receptions and receiving yards. The only person in front of him, first-team All-Pro Trey McBride. So, Field, what should the Falcons do with Kyle Pitts this
Courtney,
offseason?
I'm going to let him test the market here. I would like to bring Kyle Pitts back, but it has to be back on my own terms as well. This team does have some needs all across the roster, and they do not have a first-round pick. So there's going to be more limited resources to work with this offseason. And that, of course, doesn't even get into the fact that this team has to figure out what at least its beginning of season quarterback plan is going to look like until Michael Penix Jr. does return. So let's let him hit the open market and try to negotiate.
All right, let's go up to Cincinnati where Trey Hendrickson and that contract saga continues. Hendrickson was limited to just 7 games last season after undergoing core muscle surgery, but the Bengals pass rusher has been a game wrecker when he's on the field, finishing with 17.5 sacks in both 2023 and 2024, the most sacks by any player in that span. Booger, we remember how contentious things got between Hendrickson and the Bengals last offseason. Ultimately, he doesn't get that long-term deal, but he got a $13 million raise. Do you think Cincinnati uses the tag on their star defensive end?
I do not. I think Cincinnati, like this relationship has been contentious for a long time. It doesn't seem like Cincinnati wants to pay him, like they want the services, but they don't want to commit to him long term. I think Trey Hendrickson is tired of that. I think the injury season last season where he only had 4 sacks in 7 games, I think he still has a little bit in the tank. And if I'm Trey Hendrickson, I don't want to be tagged. And I think Cincinnati has shown you that they want to move on somewhere else. So I think this would be best if both parties split apart.
Okay, let's continue to ping pong across the country. Go down to Dallas, where wide receiver George Pickens is expected to receive the franchise tag from the Cowboys, according to Adam Schefter. Pickens recorded career highs in receptions, yards, and touchdowns in his first season with America's team. Only Offensive Player of the Year, Jackson Smith-Njigba and Puka Nacua, finished with more receiving yards than Pickens did last season. Lou, do you expect a long-term deal to get done with Pickens in Dallas?
Well, that's a trick question right there. Do I expect a long-term deal? I think it's going to be tricky. I think it's going to be difficult. You look the franchise tag is $28.8 for wide receivers. I'm sure the Dallas Cowboys would like to go ahead and get a contract that maybe averages around that, considering that CD is already well north of $30 million plus, and no team has 2 wide receivers at $30 million plus. The problem is George Pickens knows if he hit the open market, he would get well above $30 million per year more than likely. So I don't know, where this thing heads, but I think for the Cowboys, you have to throw the tag on him and see if you can work something out.
Okay, to Seattle, where reigning Super Bowl champs. The reigning Super Bowl champs are not expected to place the franchise tag on Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker III. Walker, if he's not retained by Seattle, would be the only the 4th player all time to win Super Bowl MVP and start the following season on a new team. The first since Dexter Jackson left Tampa Bay and for Arizona in 2003. Boog, financially, it makes sense not to use the tag on Walker. That's about $14.5 million. But should Seattle find a way to keep him on the roster without using the tag?
I do think that would be wise. You got to realize that Zach Charbonnet is coming off the ACL. Not sure when he's going to be ready. And let's move aside the MVP. I get the accolades. Just look at a healthy running back, a guy that knows your system. You're losing your offensive coordinator. You want to have some sense of familiarity. So bringing Kenneth Walker back gives the quarterback, Sam Darnold, a familiar face to turn around and hand the football off. I think they need this. I think they got to have a little stability. You want to make sure that your quarterback is comfortable, that this offense can run the football, because even though Sam Darnold was outstanding in a lot of games last year, this team runs the football. Their physicality, both offensively and defensively, is their calling card. So if you lose Walker and you don't have Charbonnet, where are you going to get that familiarity and that physicality from? So I think the 14 for the franchise tag is probably too rich. The transition tag at 11 is probably too rich. I think if you could get Kenneth Walker somewhere on the $10 million a year, I think everybody in Seattle would feel really, really good to have him back. And I think the offense and Sam Darnold will benefit from it.
I think this is something that's really important to state whenever we're talking about Kenneth Walker III. He's been a very popular topic on our airwaves over the past week and a half. When somebody, myself included, suggests the team should not use the franchise tag on Kenneth Walker III, it's nothing negative about the player that Kenneth Walker III is. It is more a recognition of the reality that Seattle is now facing. They've got a ton of great players and a lot of guys that play positions that are simply harder to find elite players at than running back. And when you have to pay a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba a price tag that could be close to $40 million per year, and Devin Witherspoon, which could approach $30 million per year, and guys down the line that are going to be due for new contracts sooner rather than later, at some point you got to make this puzzle fit with all the pieces, and some of those pieces just don't quite fit at the price tag that player would desire. I would love for Seattle to find a way to bring him back. They just have to be mindful, Lewis, of doing it more on their terms than the franchise tag terms, because if they keep Kenneth Walker III at $14.5 million and it costs them somebody else at a different position, that's one of the hardest things that you're balancing right now as the Seattle Seahawks front office.
Yeah, look, and honestly, objectively, you could say as good as Kenneth was in the Super Bowl in particular and in the NFC title game, when you look at the body of work and you're trying to project his future performance, is he worthy of 14 plus per year? The kind of money that's reserved for guys who are explosive playmaking machines, plus 10, plus 15-yard playmaking machines, not just in the run game, but the pass game, where you're talking about guys like Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry as a pure downhill. Over the past 2 years, Derrick Henry has more plus 10-yard runs than any running back in the NFL by a wide margin, almost twice as many as Kenneth Walker. So for him, look, if you're John Schneider, of course you'd love to pay all your guys whatever the heck they want, especially after coming off of a Super Bowl season. But there's only so much to go around. You have to look at the comparables. $9 to $10 million is probably fair value for him. And unfortunately for Kenneth, he's going to say that's not good enough and probably going to test the market.
Yeah, they're going to have to do something because we know that Zach Charbonnet got hurt in January in the divisional round, won't be ready for quite some time. So they'll need some help in the backfield.